Gargamuni.
Yeah, Gargamuni and Brahmananda.
Yeah, like with my laptop, I can like lock it.
But they started gouging, so Prabhupada told them no. And he explained that there's a Vedic standard for profit making. You can't make more than a certain percent.
Yeah, it was 25%.
No, it was like 5%. In fact, he explained that Indian businessmen, their profit is, or their ras in doing business is to have the stock, and they will turn it over even if they just make 1 or 2%.
The inventory.
And he said, your Western merchandising where you got to make 100% or more, he said that's not business. That's something else.
Yeah.
So they keep stock of grain or whatever, or cloth, whatever merchandise they deal in, and they'll turn it over even if they make as long as they don't lose anything, they'll turn it over. Of course, now times have changed, probably. There was a point when I was leaving Germany and going to India. I had a couple small buses.
Was it the same 76 for the Mayapur Festival?
I can't remember the years.
I heard that you all were stopping and doing Harinam all along the way.
But I didn't go overland. I flew in, but we also had 2 big buses, like 40 seaters, a Mercedes and an MAN bus. So before we took off, we stopped in Paris, right? And naturally, like devotees do, they're trying to recruit. Like, come on, let's go. So some of the French devotees, they got into that. And then
They actually went?
yeah, they basically went in the middle of the night.
Right.
But
The old Radha Damodar tactic.
yeah. So then the Bhagavan and whoever, they went to Prabhupada and complained bitterly about Hansadutta is stealing our men. So after they left the room, then Prabhupada turned to me. He said, well, if I was a young man and you offered for me to go to India, I would also go. So I said, okay. That's nice.
Srila Prabhupada. Well, that's what I was going to suggest to you that let's start a traveling Sankirtan party.
It sounds great, but I'm a worn man. I'm a worn out guy. It's everything it takes to just make it through the day.
We've got it's an airport shuttle bus.
Where do you stay?
Well, I was from Massachusetts.
No, I mean, where do you?
I have, like I said, I have a tent. I was tenting
Oh,
in
I
the backyard.
I mean, are you located somewhere on the East Coast, rather?
I was from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I had a house there that I had inherited from my family, but my brother took the equity out, an equity loan, didn't put it back.
And that was the end of that.
That was the end of that. So now it's
I
just...
take it he's not a devotee.
No, he's not.
No.
So
Well-
now it's just me in the open road.
Krishna's just making sure that you're going to come back to Godhead, or not
I like to see it like
not
that.
back to the house.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It was just like this very comfortable, no necessities, very lollygagging, just lollygagging.
Right.
It wasn't good. So this is better.
No. Krishna, like I said in the beginning, for every individual devotee, Krishna has scripted and choreographed the way that will make it possible for him to come. Because not everyone comes, it's not like a standard thing. It's very unique how any devotee you talk to, they'll have some story how they came in touch with Krishna and Prabhupada.
So what's your story? Have you told it?
My story is, I had a friend, his name was Bob Lefkowitz, and when he got
And
initiated...
this is in Manhattan?
This is 67. I lived in Hoboken at the time.
Okay.
That was you are?
I live in Hoboken.
Which street?
I live on 14th and I live in Shipyard right now.
Oh, I see. I lived on 2nd Street, right across the street from where they made On the Waterfront.
Oh
The
yeah.
famous movie.
Yeah, I do. I work there every day. We set up movies under the stars.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we set up a movie on Pier A. Like
Well,
every
now,
other
now, but my apartment in those days was,
across town.
no. It was $19.50. It was a 4-room apartment overlooking the whole New York skyline, you
For
know.
$20?
And after I joined the movement, I used to come to New York, and I'd always come to Hoboken just to see, right, old times. They turned it into $1 million condominium.
Yeah, I'm paying $5,000 a month for a 2-bedroom.
Well, I was paying $19.50.
So it was a spillover from the Lower East Side?
Yeah. When the Lower East Side became a destination point for the yuppie kind of people, then a lot of landlords had a deliberate program to somehow or other push their tenants out, so they could
Raise the rent.
raise the rent. So I was one of those. I had an apartment on 7th Street and Avenue C, a few blocks from the temple at that time. But before I became a devotee, I went to Hoboken. I spent a couple of years in Hoboken.
So how did Krishna lasso you?
Yeah, so my story is,
Once upon a time.
once upon a time, living in Hoboken, I had a friend, Bob Lefkowitz, and when he got initiated, he was one of the first initiated devotees, that was 1967. And his name became Ravinda Swarup, not the one you know now, that was the later one. Anyway, he used to live with me for a short time, but he was a little eccentric, you know. Not crazy, but, you know, eccentric. So at some point he moved out, and then the next time I saw him again, which was early '67, he came to my place and he started telling me about the Swami. I should come and meet the Swami.
Was he all shaved up with a dhoti? or
No,
anything?
he wasn't shaved up. He had his hair, and I think he still had a beard. But he was in touch with the Swami up at Mishra's ashram in upstate New York. So when he came over to my house and he started telling me about the Swami, right? The only image we had of a Swami was from the movies, you know, a guy with a turban and a jewel and a mustache.
Maybe rode on a magic carpet.
Yeah, something like that, you know, or he was kind of some sinister character. So he's telling me about the Swami, that the Swami loves everyone, he sings beautifully. And if I go there, he'll give me some hand symbols. I'm like, Bob, get real. So, but he leaves me a little booklet, Easy Journey to Other Planets, the ones Prabhupada brought from India, kind of a greenish.
And you left it in your car.
Yeah, and I didn't read it because first of all, I didn't go to school very much, so it was difficult for me to read anything. So I just threw it in my car, but that car broke down on 2nd Avenue and St. Mark's Place, which is 6 blocks from the temple at that time. So, anyway, within the next few weeks, my life just started to unravel in different ways, and I was really, you know, losing it, right? And at some point, I got this compulsion. I got to read that little book. So one day, I just went over to St. Mark's Place to see if my car was still there, because I had abandoned it. The tranny fell out or something, you know. And my car's still there, windows are broken, all trashed out. I rummaged through the car and the book is there, a little pamphlet. And I start reading it. And every page was like, you know, like 4th of July fireworks going off for me. It just really transforming, just penetrated my heart and mind and everything. And when I came to the end, I mean, the key point in the book was, but all the perfect yogi can go to any planet he likes. Because Prabhupada wrote this for the scientists who were going to the moon, right? And he explained how yogi, he can go to any planet. But he said, but what is the use? Why should one bother himself to go to a planet? Because they're all temporary. At the time of dissolution, they'll all be destroyed. But if one comes to the planet of Krishna, that's forever.
Yeah.
And that really, I thought, wow, okay, that's for me.
Had you been into any kind of mysticism?
No, I was into the
esoteric-
hollow earth and the planets. There's like a whole, supposedly.
Admiral Byrd.
Yeah, I was into that. Anyway,
It's
I
coming-
was not
it's-
into like Eastern religion or philosophy or anything like that.
Right.
Just so I just walked straight down to Second Street and Second Avenue where the temple, and walked in and said, whatever I have to know or do, tell me. I want to do this. I want to get into it. They thought I was some kind of a weirdo because generally people don't do that.
Like totally surrender.
Yeah, just walk in. So I spent maybe a couple hours there. I remember one question I asked, I think it was Chutananda. I said, did you guys do yoga or anything? No, we don't have time for that. I thought this was a spiritual place. Anyway, so after a couple hours of kind of hanging out there and
This is the first time
it
you
was
went.
difficult for me to ask questions because I was so kind of puffed up, I guess, or proud, or I just didn't know how to relate, and on that basis. Anyway, so I decided, okay, I got a bag of beads with the string, a few flyers, and a few pamphlets that they had published. Not published, but just mimeographed stuff stapled together. And I'm just getting ready to go out the door, then I remembered the Krishna thing. How does that go? I asked. I think it was Mahapurush. I said, how does it go, this Krishna thing that you guys do? So we repeated it about a dozen times. Finally he said, you got it, that's how. I said, okay. And as soon as I walked out the temple, at the top of my lungs, as if there was a fire. Like you've seen crazy people that are, talking to somebody that you can't see, and you just a write-off, right? Everybody just like, he's a goner. So when I was doing this chanting, it's loud, I after a block or so, I noticed how people were seeing me like that. And it hit me that this is liberation. I'm liberated. I'm not a part of the world anymore. I'm out of it as long as I keep chanting.
Right.
And then when I got to the car, I said, well, what about Helena? That was Himavati, right? I said, well, okay, I'll go back, get her some beads, and if she goes for good, if not, then I'll just come back to the temple, finish. It was that complete.
First one shot.
Yeah. Like Bob, he didn't know, I guess at the time, how to preach really, or he was just saying things that didn't make any sense to me. And one of the things he kept doing, he'd ask me to give him a glass of water, right? I'd say, the water's right there, get it yourself. Because his idea, and later I understood, was to get me to do some service, right? I was saying, the water's right there, just take it, why are you asking me for the water? So, anyway, that's, so I go back and I give the little pieces of literature we had to Himavati, Helena. And she said, no, I don't want to read anything, because there was a wave there, and at that time, and you don't read anything, everything is like... I said, no, just read one page. If after one page it doesn't interest you, I know where you're at. And so she read a little bit, and she said, yeah, I think it's wonderful. Oh, I said, great. So here's the beads, and then we started stringing the beads, right? In those days, you strung your own beads, and... I was a smoker at the time. I didn't have any problem with the beer and meat and all that, but the smoking was like, because I smoked from morning till night, I had the little roll yourself bugle boy.
Bugler,
right, 10 cents a pack. So I asked my friend Luke, he lived downstairs, he was a banjo player. He was actually a friend of Dylan's, and I sometimes play with him over in the village. So I said, give me a little pot because I'm trying to stop smoking. And he did. And I couldn't stand pot. It made me sick, see, but it was smoke. I figured I gotta have something. And in 4 days or so, that was it. I was finished with the smoking.
Had you been into political activism? Because there was
No.
all kinds of,
I once
political
tried a little bit
upheaval.
because I was an artist, so I once made a poster for them. A fist up in the air, this kind of. But I went to their office and I saw what lame people, they were totally spaced out lame people, so I didn't want to get into that. I wasn't interested in that. I was an artist, I was painting,
And that's how you made your living.
I didn't make I don't know I can't tell you even how I made a living, but somehow or other, $19.50 for the rent.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, and like a loaf of bread cost a quarter. Kind of thing.
Yeah. And so every day I go back to the New York temple. There's a subway that goes under the river. It's called the Tubes. They call them the Tubes. It goes right to Hoboken. Anyway, and I always was, pushing them that I want to move in. What I didn't know at the time was because I was married, that was like out of the question. Because no women, the 22nd Avenue was like no wider than this temple, this table. But they didn't know how to tell me that, see, because it was such a new thing. Finally, after 4 or 5 days of me coming back and bugging them, they figured we got to find some way to get rid of this guy. He keeps, he keeps coming back here. So they go into a huddle, and one guy comes back and he says, we just sent Keith. Keith went to Montreal to start a temple. Would you be willing to go to Montreal? I said, yeah, I was a sailor. I've been all over the world. I have no problem. And so that's what I did.
Now, who was we? That was Brahmananda, Gargamuni?
Brahmananda, Gargamuni wasn't there yet. And Mahapurush was one of their guys. Satsarup, but I didn't see him that I can remember, or Rupanuga.
Chutananda?
Chutananda, I remember. The second day I came, I brought Himavati, and we went upstairs to Prabhupada's little apartment in the back. And after spending a few hours there,
with Srila Prabhupada?
No, Prabhupada wasn't there. He had gone to San Francisco just a little bit earlier. I came in March of '67, beginning of March. I think it was Lord Chaitanya's appearance day, because the third day I came, they all huddled around an old tape recorder. Well, a tape recorder, that was a big thing in those days still, but it was a big... And they were sending a little message to Prabhupada.
Right, yeah. On a tape, and they would send the tape.
Yeah, right. So they asked me also to say something, which I did. But anyway, where were we?
Well, you.
Yeah, so leaving the second day, I brought Himavati, or Helena. And just when we had been there a few hours, we decided to go back. I'm walking out of Prabhupada's, the Swami's apartment, and just before you go out the door to your right, there's like an alcove, and that was the kitchen. And Chutananda, he was a kind of a short guy, Charles Barnett. He was a flute player for Richie Havens.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, he was musical. He was a little guy. So I'm seeing him, and he's trying to clean the stove. So I said, I stopped. I said, you got to take the top off if you're going to clean the stove. You can't clean it unless you take the top off. So that was a Navy cook, ship's cook. So he says, well, why don't you do this if you know how to do it so well? I said, sure. So me and Himavati, we spent the next couple of hours just cleaning that kitchen from top to bottom, because it was really kind of grungy, And that was my first service. So, and then I didn't have a car, but I had a friend who had a car on Avenue C. You know where Avenue C is?
No.
Well, it's in the the extreme Lower East Side. really heavy place. A lot of Puerto Rican and people, poor people, real poor. He had an office there. He was a lawyer, and he was a do-good lawyer, helping the hippies keep their apartment, rent control, all that kind of thing. Big guy, 300 pounds. I come in and I said, Floyd, I need your car. He said, what do you mean you need my car? I need my car for work. I said, no, this is different. This is for Krishna. He said, I don't care who it's for. I'm not giving you my car. So I sat with him for about an hour and a half or 2 hours, and at the end of that, I got the keys to the car.
Can you say more about that? I mean, how that happened?
Well,
'Cause it was-
I was just, for some, I don't know if this happens to everyone that becomes a devotee, but for me, everything, it was like, I'd always been a devotee. It all fell into place. We can use everything for Krishna. Car, TVs, money, whatever it is, we got, and I was right into getting it all. So I came with that attitude to his office.
Yeah.
Anyway, he gave me the keys. But that car got stuck just a week earlier up in Connecticut in the snow, right? Wouldn't start. But he gave me the keys. He said, if you can get it, it's yours. You can take it. So I had a friend, Archie Dukeshire. He lived in the building that Prabhupada was in. And the car got stuck at his place, or a friend of his, that where they hung out and did their whatever they do, their sense gratificatory romps. So Archie, I convinced him to drive me up there and get the car. And he said, but the car won't start. I said, it's going to start because it's for Krishna. And all the way driving, it took about an hour and a half or so to get up there. I'm preaching to Archie how you gotta, become a devotee. This is the highest thing. We're not the body and so forth. And he keeps saying, yeah, I know it's the highest thing, but I got one more thing that I gotta do. He wanted to open a bar for eccentric far-out people down in Florida, because he was from Florida. I said, no, Archie, that's what Maya is, to think that you got some other thing to do or one more thing to do before you join. You got to join now, otherwise, you'll
Garden gate may close.
Right. And the fact is that he didn't join, and a year later he opened his bar, but he drowned.
Is that right?
Yeah. So he was a very nice guy. I really liked him. So, but then getting back to the car, we drive up to Connecticut. The car is sitting on, a couple feet of snow. And I said to Archie,
I'll see you on Saturday too.
okay.
Really busy after that, but then we'll have some time. I'll update you on the projects and things.
Okay, all right. Hare Krishna. So still trying to convince him. So I said, Archie, now you know that this car wouldn't start when we last were here. But because Krishna wants me to have this car, I'm going to shovel away the snow, get in, it's going to start right up. I thought that would impress him, right? And sure enough, I did that, and it started right up. But he's still not convinced. Then the other thing I did was that I said, Archie, because, I'm going to take a hit of LSD. In fact, I'm going to take 2 hits of LSD, and nothing's going to happen to me, because I don't have any more junk in my brain. I'm just, Krishna. And I did, and nothing happened, except I couldn't sleep all night, But Archie never became a devotee. Anyway, I got the car, and then the next...
Maybe it wasn't very good acid.
That could be true too. I don't know, But at any rate, I was not a dope guy. I didn't get into that. In fact, Archie was the guy who originally convinced me I should take it, but I resisted for the longest time. I was terrified about drugs. So, anyway, a day or two later, after we got the car down, we drove to Montreal. And before I left, they shunted Jodharani off on me because, they're all brahmacharis. And she lived in the Bronx, and she was always coming down, so it was awkward for them. And they asked me, would I take her? I said, yeah, sure, why not?
She's in Alachua now, in the Narayan Maharaj camp. In Alachua, and she's doing really nice. She has her own little ashram. She has all these brahmacharinis that she preaches to and cultivates like that. Selling her paintings, doing her paintings. She's working on her book.
Yeah.
She's working on her biography book.
Mm.
But she's got a whole little. She's like kind of revered there. So she has a second floor apartment at the ashram and all her
Yeah, yeah.
brahmacharis.
Yeah, so but a funny thing happened at the, hey, Baba.
Hey, Baba.
Where are you going?
Harinam.
Where?
Hare Krishna.
Berkeley.
Huh?
Berkeley.
Berkeley.
Yeah.
On Telegraph?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. After I finish, maybe I'll walk up that way and
Okay.
hear your vibrations.
Haha. The Krishna. Prabhupada vibration. Yeah. Hey, about the Lord. Lord.
So you took Radharani to Montreal with you.
Yeah, so when we got to the border, turns out she didn't have a passport. I thought, how can someone not have a passport? I was 26 years old in those days, and I spent, 3.5 years in the Navy. So, I couldn't imagine that anyone would not have a passport when he's going to go to another country. But in those days, it wasn't such a rigid thing. So that we wound up at the temple and
They let you and her go. She
Yeah.
enter.
and Kirtananda, he was there, Kirtananda. And I think I'd seen a film, like an 8mm film clip of him, Kirtananda, when I was in 26nd Ave, before I left there, in the first few days.
Yeah.
And he was kind of a scary-looking guy. He had even a couple teeth missing, he was unshaven. But anyway, that was my first. Well, like Kirtananda said in a couple of days after we were up in Madras, he said, I'm going to teach Helena how to cook. I said, no, you got to teach me how to cook. Because I was a Navy cook, and I had seen someone in New York making chapatis. And I asked him, how did you do that? How do you get it to puff up? He said, well, it just does, I said, no, what do you put in the dough? He said, just water. I said, no, you got to be putting something in the dough to make it rise, right? He said, no, it's just water and flour. I said, I don't believe it. How does it puff up? He said, well, it's Krishna's arrangement. So anyway, that's why I wanted to learn how to cook. So, but Kirtananda, he wanted to teach her. I said, if you don't teach me to cook, I'm leaving. Of course, I wouldn't have left. I just said that. Kirtananda. And so that was March, towards, middle or end of March. And Prabhupada had just gone, maybe a month, I can't remember how long before I came, but not much. He went to San Francisco. So I got initiated then, so March I came, March, and May 11th I got initiated. We drove down to New York. And I think at the beginning of June, Prabhupada had that heart attack. And so Kirtananda left Montreal to assist, accompany Prabhupada to India. So I was in charge of the temple.
Up in Montreal.
Yeah, and I loved it. I thought it was terrific.
But you didn't have any impulse to go and see Srila Prabhupada.
No, because, I actually, when I read that little book, Easy Journey, I was so completely, transformed and convinced. I didn't even know that there was a person, that there was a person like Prabhupada. I just the content of the book completely transformed me.
Wow.
And even when I learned, I had no I noticed that some of the devotees, they were like groupies, like you do for rock stars, you want to be with them. But I didn't have that at the beginning, because the text, the content, the philosophy was so it was so substantial for me.
Yeah.
And anyway, So when Prabhupada got the heart attack, Kirtananda went with him. But I did in short order, come to the conclusion I always have to do something so I can write the Swami a letter. Because, having spent 4 years in the Navy, I didn't want to be under someone who wasn't the ultimate guy.
Right.
Because I saw the devotees were kind of spaced out.
Right.
They of course were devotees, but when it came to doing practical things, they were somehow or other very chaotic. And this was one of the first problems that in my Krishna consciousness. I thought I would become irritated because people will lose your stuff or forget your stuff or break your stuff or don't come on time and all these kind of things. And it would really irritate me. And I didn't know how to deal with it because I was thinking, I'm so materialistic, I just can't, I want to. But then I learned quickly that no, that's not the way it is. You do everything, as systematic and intelligent and careful. Because for Krishna, it's not like spiritual life. The spiritual thing is just, a vague, hazy affair. No.
Another thing that I wonder about is what was going on here. It was what was it, 78 or something like that, and this whole thing. I don't know, if you don't want to get into it, but this whole thing about the guns and everything like that.
What?
Guns.
Oh. No, I don't want to get into that because everybody takes these stories. There are tons of stories floating around about these things, and add and subtract, and they just get so bent out of shape. It's,
Yeah. Quagmire.
A quagmire. Yeah.
Yeah, this somehow or other, this area, the Bay Area, has got a special mystique, from the whole 60s era,
Yeah.
and then Krishna consciousness kind of springing out of it. That,
I opened the Berkeley Temple, right? You know that, right?
No, can you tell me about that?
Well, anyway, Prabhupada went to India when he had the heart attack. Kirtananda went with him, and so I was in charge of that temple. And I was telling you, I was so, intoxicated and energized by this little book, Easy Journey on the Planet. After Kirtananda left, I started thinking that that other people should read this book, because if someone reads it like I read it, the same thing's going to happen to them, because it was so substantial.
Well, I heard you talk about the whole world will get turned on.
Yeah. So I decided to print it, and in those days it was the mimeograph.
Right.
So I bought a mimeograph machine, paper and stencils, and got somebody to do the typing. Got Bharadwaj to do a cover stencil, picture of, like on the Bhagavatam
And
cover.
this was when you're still in Montreal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably 1968, I'd say.
And Bharadwaj would have been in New York?
No. He joined in Montreal.
Oh, okay.
That's another story. There was a like a frat house around the corner from the temple, and it was full of these young kids.